When Governor Hickenlooper runs for president and some national news interviewer asks him what his weakness is, he should pretend like he's thinking for a minute and then say, well, there's that time that I pretended like I wasn't running for president. Because let's face it, our governor is terrible at this maybe I'll run, maybe I won't game. Our Marshall Zellinger explains the governor's latest toe dip into the political waters that he desperately wants to be shoved into.
When Governor John Hickenlooper starts a political action committee, of course it would be named after a catchy phrase he used to end his final State of the State.
One last time from this podium, giddy up.
Hickenlooper's leadership PAC, called Giddy Up, has a modest website. You can sign up for emails or donate, nothing else. This committee allows him to giddy up to other states to campaign for other candidates, which would also happen to increase his national profile.
It does allow him to stay active and relevant and engaged in the policy and political process around the country.
Jim Carpenter is the former chief of staff for Governor Bill Ritter and a Democratic strategist who understands what a leadership PAC is and is not.
It's a way for an elected official to travel to other states, for example, to campaign for other candidates running.
Which is why later this week, Hickenlooper will travel to Florida to campaign for Democratic gubernatorial candidate Andrew Gillum, and then Georgia for Democratic gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams, helping other Democrats while also getting his message to a new audience.
It's part of being a good governor, a good fellow governor to the Democrats. Sure, it raises his profile. It keeps him active and involved politically. And in policy that he cares about.
He can also use the PAC money to support candidates in Colorado running for Congress, but he cannot use the money to help a certain Democrat running for his job. State law prevents that. Have we mentioned that having this political action committee is likely the next step toward possibly running for president? It also likely includes polling and surveys of voters outside of Colorado to see what they think of Hick's policies, or if he's got any name recognition outside of Colorado.
Oh, I see. How does this work? So he's going all over the country to campaign for people. Is that something we pay for? How does that work?
This would be paid for from this political action committee, but anything for his security, like his state patrol, that is paid for by us, regardless of where he's going and what it's for.
And we're paying for his state patrol security when he's here. It's just there we're paying for hotel rooms and meals and things like that.
Correct.
Got it. All right, Marshall, thank you. So remember when we showed you that super awkward video of the Frederick town manager getting canned at a public meeting and then unfired because city council didn't have enough votes? Well, he's gone now, for real. He resigned. He's done. And Matt LaSurf is walking away with a tasty settlement. 13 months of severance pay, health insurance, a letter of recommendation that does not say how they tried to fire him and botched it. And then get this, he still gets to attend a city manager's conference in Baltimore next week, which sounds to me like an awesome place to interview for his next city manager job in a place where city council doesn't hate him. While you were going about your business this weekend, the far right and Antifa were yelling at each other outside the state capitol. You know, the kind of small-scale conflict that each of those sides loves in its effort to look big and strong. At the end of the day, 7 people were arrested, apparently on the Antifa side, and a state patrol officer is under investigation for appearing to egg on the far-right protesters. Denver police say 7 people in all were arrested following this far-right rally. An Antifa Twitter account was trying to raise bond money for its people over the weekend. Of course, now each side is saying that the other one started it, and from the looks of the video and observations of law enforcement at the scene, both sides came out there looking for a fight. This state patrol officer is on paid leave while CSP investigates what he said to the far-right protesters. He gathered them up and told them, quote, if you want to fight, stick around. I've got a couple of guys. They also want to fight, end quote. Now, the far-right protesters say that he was telling them, if you want to fight, well, then you're going to have to fight troopers. The left is saying that officer was encouraging the far-right to go out and fight Antifa. And while they squabble, you went about your weekend. Yeah, those far-right guys are going to be steaming hot when they see that Denver has once again unfurled its Denver Hearts Immigrants banner. That enormous banner used to hang at City Hall. Now it's on the Webb building. The city is calling this Welcoming Week, recognizing immigrants and refugees in the city. Colorado's 2 senators agree that Congress needs to hear from the woman accusing Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh of sexual assault. And now we know that's going to happen in public under oath 1 week from today. That's when Dr. Christine Ford and Kavanaugh are expected to offer their conflicting recollections of what did and did not happen when they were in high school. It has been a long summer filled with some difficult news in Colorado, and not even talking about the natural disasters that we've covered, the flooding and the fires. In fact, so many significant news stories broke over the past few months, you might not even recall all of them. Jordan Chavez walks us through what's happened.
Before summer even officially started, the string of breaking and heartbreaking stories began. In their wake, lots of questions. In mid-June, a mom and her children were victims of what Westminster police say started as road rage. Megan Bigelow and her 2 sons were shot outside a dentist office. One of the kids, Vaughn Jr., died. Megan and young Asa now back home. Asa released from the hospital just last month. As for the shooter, his time in court is just beginning. We can't forget the explosion that injured 9 people and destroyed a 6-unit building on Santa Fe Drive just last month.
We looked up and there was a big plume of smoke.
Denver Fire says they think it was caused by natural gas, but they still don't know for sure. Then there's that case out of Frederick that's captured the nation's attention.
I just want them home so bad.
After looking into our cameras, saying he missed his family, Chris Watts is accused of killing his pregnant wife and 2 daughters. The girls' bodies were found in a well filled with crude oil, their mom Shanann nearby.
And I would point out, Mr. Watts,
the Weld County DA's office says it's still too early to say if they'll go for the death penalty. After all, this case is far from over.
There's a shooting at the school.
Almost 3 weeks ago, parents frantically tried to pick up their kids inside classrooms put on lockdown. A 14-year-old was charged with attempted first-degree murder after a shooting outside DSST Cole Middle School. The teen who was shot still in the hospital in serious condition. The school district says more than $12,000 have been raised to help their family. As this summer of difficult news comes to an end, we now hope for a season of answers. For Next, I'm Jordan Chavez.
Our next question comes from a few of you. Sarah, Kathleen, Jonathan, all want to know what's happening with the lanes on Monaco, where it turns into East Princeton Avenue and Eastmore Drive, just north of Quincy. They asked, where should we drive?
So we asked Denver Public Works about these new traffic lanes, and I get it, because it can be kind of confusing there. That is not a bike lane that is going down the center of the street. That is the buffer on the right, traffic lane for cars on the left. The bikes go on the right there. Installation of the bike lanes underway, and there's more markings out there now that make things a bit more clear. We understand this. Long-time traffic patterns change. People are going to have questions about it. Want everybody to be safe. Public Works says they're transitioning that much-driven area from 2 lanes of traffic and a parking lane to 1 lane of traffic, 1 bike lane, 1 parking lane. May I make a recommendation? This is where we point you towards something that did not come from us, but I think is worth your time. I've told you that I love a podcast called The Memory Palace. This is the work of Nate DeMeo. He's an artist in residence at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in 2016-2017. He is a gorgeous writer who takes you inside hidden history, and he recently explored the swarm of Rocky Mountain locusts, which descended on America in the late 1800s, covered a third of the country or so at one point. This was a loud, buzzing horde that ate everything in sight. It ruined livelihoods across the country. I highly recommend you give it a listen. It's 10 minutes or less. Lost Locusts, episodes 131 of The Memory Palace. There's a link to it on the next Facebook page. Recently here we shared a story about a well-known cardiologist in the Denver area, Dr. Robert Marshall. He was a runner. He ate right. He was one of the sharpest minds in the medical field, took good care of his body, and then his mind began to fail. He was diagnosed with dementia. But for all he has forgotten, he's still able to remember a song that he recorded in 1956. His daughter plays it for him often, and that's when his memory clears. Dr. Bob was at the Walk to End Alzheimer's at Denver City Park over the weekend with so many of us. He was there with his daughters, Marla, Carrie, and Lisa. Happened to pass him just by the finish line. This is before I even knew his story. I was struck by that man shuffling along in the heat of the day, encouraged on by his family. We wish them well as they continue their journey.
An epic submission in your new favorite segment, You've Crossed a Line. We're about to get a break from the 90s after a record for the most consecutive 90-degree days in September. And a few signs, sandwiched together, tell you all you need to know about Denver. Next.
All right, it's time to tell another Coloradan, you've crossed a line, and this time it is not a driver. This could be one of my all-time favorites. Carl Curtis says you are looking at a space, so to speak, in the employee parking lot at DIA, a space that is permanently blocked by whoever decided to put in that light pole. Carl says occasionally he'll see a small car try and make a go of it. Carl says it has been like this for 23 years at DIA. They don't want to stripe it off. They're like, you know what? If you want to try. If you see somebody or something crossing the line, email next@9news.com or get our attention with the hashtag HeyNext.
My horse would park just fine in that spot. He would fit in just fine. Hey, we thank all of you so much for watching us tonight on Channel 20. We appreciate you. I'm counting raindrops tonight, something I haven't been able to do for quite a while. Now, yes, there's only 3 of them, but there are actually some thunderstorms producing wind and lightning and a little tiny bit of rain. After a week of this, yes, we should be in the 70s, and no, we are not going to see a break for one more day. 92 is our high today, the record 95. We've had 5 records so far this week, 3 tied, 2 broken. High pressure ridge is breaking down, though, allowing for some of that moisture to get caught underneath that ridge in the flow, and that means there's a better chance of showers in the high country, not across the western slope, not so much for Denver, but cooler air is to follow after tomorrow. Tonight, isolated gusty storms and clearing, low 61. Tomorrow, highs back in the low 90s. And here we go. Wednesday, cooler, below 90. I have isolated thunder showers on Thursday with temperatures in the 70s for Friday, the last day of summer. Autumnal equinox is Saturday, and temperatures trending back into the low and mid 80s for the early to middle part of next week. And I bet, Kyle, that cloud right there, that might have some rain in it too.
Yeah, that's the dangerous one. All right, thank you, Kathy. It's a sign, one of the Denver area's best known signs, based on the number of times the next viewers have found it interesting enough to pull over and snap a photo of what is on the Indian Hills sign. Well, there's the guy who comes up with all the punny things that go on the sign. His name is Vince. He started the sign when he was a volunteer for the Indian Hills Community Center 6 years ago. Vince has been known to cause some real trouble with what he puts on the sign.
I crossed the line, PG-13 maybe, with a sign that read, "There's no place like home, where the hoe and me come together." With permission from my wife over there, somebody said, "How do I explain this to my grandkids?" And I said, well, explain to them that home is spelled with an H-O and an M-E, and when they come together, it spells home. And if they have other questions, they're probably ready to understand it.
That's Vince and his sign. He sat down with Steve Steger. The story behind the guy who makes a lot of people stop and go, huh? That airs tonight on 9 News at 9 and 10. Another sign, too good not to pass up. This is Broncos football edition here. You see these signs around town, these hate has no home here signs, talking about the value of diversity. I love that it's slapped over with a Raider hater sign at the Bermudez home in Commerce City. Savannah sent it to us. There's hate there, but just on that one Sunday.
Arlo has a century's worth of wisdom, which he carves into his creations.
If I get an idea, well, I buy a little piece of wood and away we go.
Leaf peeping should not be a dangerous pastime, but apparently it is based on how some of you are doing it. And the most Colorado thing we saw today is a story of highs and lows, really. That's next.
When we ask you if there's somebody that you know that we should meet, we are serious, because we know that people like Sylvia Kreider will write to us about people like Arlo Sonnenberg. Sylvia told us that Arlo is like an adopted father to her. He's 100 years old, still intent on sharing his gifts with others. Our Byron Reed met him today.
Well, it's a kind of a long story.
Arlo Sonnenberg,
when I was just a little,
can tell us all a little bit about observing life.
Well, I hope so.
After all,
that's my parents.
He's been doing it for quite some time now.
And I'm 100 years old now. Feel so blessed.
Arlo is a woodworker and has been creating with his hands since he was a little boy in eastern Colorado.
I was interested in drawing and making things, putting wheels on little pieces of wood to make a cart.
He went to school for industrial arts, and his creativity has led to some interesting inventions.
This is a new idea for a sound post. You enter here and you move it around.
And now he likes to spend his time in his wood shop, still using his hands to create art with a little message.
This is love, and love is is such an important ingredient in life.
Sonnenberg shares his creations with family and friends and says they're all made with a passion that comes from his heart.
Let people to know what I'm thinking and what maybe they can be thinking about. I just hope that it'll resonate a little bit within them and feel that these are some of the important things in life.
Arlo hopes his works of art,
this is who I am, this is who I want you to remember,
will inspire others to pay attention. For Next, I'm Byron Reed.
Arlo does not sell his woodworking, he gives it away. Beautiful pieces like this, they come with little notes tucked inside. This is the one that he sent with our photojournalist Byron Reed. The note said, emerging from a simple flat plane, these concentric star forms may symbolize an escalation of ideas and concepts in glorious, purposeful ways. Something to look at, something to think about. Thank you, Arlo. Time for another friendly lesson. That's not how you Colorado. Tonight, a plea for some high country courtesy from a woman named Annette, who lives in Nederland, and wrote into Next to ask everybody to remember, when you go to the mountains to see the changing leaves, be mindful that people live there. You're visiting someone else's hometown. And there are places to pull off the road for a great view. Just driving at a crawl as you rubberneck at leaves annoys the heck out of the locals. And state troopers tell us they are also having trouble with leaf peepers, love that term, leaf peepers wandering aimlessly on foot in the middle of roads trying to get good photos. Come on, people, that's not how you Colorado.
Understand, if you're simply stepping out into traffic, that's exactly what you're doing. You're stepping out into traffic, and you are responsible for your own actions and shouldn't rely on somebody else doing everything correctly.
People are doing it. Annette, the original emailer, also asked that everybody head into the high country also be mindful of the wildlife that make it such a beautiful place. If your head's in the leaves, still gotta have two eyes on the road. We return with one of the good ones who performed a life-saving act. She entertained kids who could have had a meltdown at the worst possible time. That's nice. The most Colorado thing we saw today is a story in several parts. Lisa and Mike Clocker from Brighton climbed a 14er over the weekend, and they happened to hit a bull elk on the way there, and they stopped for a craft beer on the way back. They wrote to us, for better or for worse, that's the Colorado experience in one day's time. This next story is not about a law enforcement officer running askance of this law. The next story is about a public servant doing the right thing, like 99% of them do every day, never make the news for it. As we love to say, they are the good ones, and they're almost all good ones. Meet Trooper Brandy Turner Hudson. She helped a mom of 2 kids over the weekend when the mom got a flat tire near Fountain. Colorado State Patrol's Castle Rock Division said while some other people helped change the tire, Brandy kept the 2 little ones entertained, show them the patrol car and all the cool police gear. I'm sure it was hot and frustrating by the side of the road, but those kids look happy, and we have Trooper Turner Hudson to thank for that. Heather writes in a conversation with my conservative father last week, I was asked for an example of a journalist who reports with integrity. I named you. Well, thank you, Heather. She goes on, my father watched Next a few times and said, I can't say I always agree with him, but he seems fair and passionate. Thank you for giving my father another option to Fox News. I'll tell you what, Heather, I hope the people who watch Fox News also watch this program. I hope the people who watch MSNBC and CNN and so forth also watch this program. Hopefully we can kind of get beyond some of the typical red-blue stuff that you see on the national news, because around here, we're all going to be in this together. This is our community, so just try and get along, listen to each other. See you next time.